So last day in the class, even though this part was not recorded, so I'm just summing up what we did the last day. We had studied the causes of cancer, and I had said that there can be three basic causes of cancer. One is the presence of carcinogen, one are the tumor promoters, and the third category is the virus. Coming to carcinogens, carcinogen can be physical or can be chemical. Physical carcinogens includes radiations or ionizing radiations. Usually, the most important ionizing radiations are the ultraviolet A, which has a huge role in skin cancer, and ultraviolet B, which mainly causes sunburn but is mutagenic. Ultraviolet A is more carcinogenic, having a wavelength of 320 to 400 nanometer. And ionizing radiations have been seen to cause mainly leukemia and thyroid cancer. Have only 2% of cancer deaths are due to radiations. The maximal amount of cancer death that has been observed is due to the presence of chemical carcinogens. Last day, I had said that any chemical that is capable of causing a mutation is known as a mutagen. It is only those mutations or mutagens that are capable of causing cancer are known as carcinogen. So anything that is capable of causing a mutation is a mutagen. Only those mutagens capable of causing cancer are known as carcinogens. Coming to chemical carcinogens, we can broadly and very ambiguously divide it into two parts. Some are known as direct acting carcinogens. These carcinogens binds to the DNA directly and act as mutagens, causing mutations in the DNA and ultimately resulting in a cancerous growth. All alkylating agents come into this category. However, there are certain carcinogens which are actually available as pro-carcinogens. I was talking about the last day monosodium glutathione. These are pro-carcinogens which are metabolically converted by normal cellular enzymes to ultimate carcinogen that binds the DNA and cause mutations. So some examples of procarcinogens are polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons such as smoke from wood, cigarettes. So these are, as I said, procarcinogen. Then azo dyes, they also come under procarcinogen. The natural metabolites such as aflatoxin from fungi. Then last day I was speaking about monosodium glutamate, MSG. So these are natural metabolites and nitrosamines. So nitrosamines also are known as procarcinogens. Now, so as I said, so these were the basic two categories of carcinogens causing cancer. We also discussed tumor promoters the other day, that particularly estrogen is important in the development of human cancers. As estrogen is mainly related to the proliferation of cells of the uterine endometrium, and exposure to excess estrogen might lead to development of endometrial cancer, might lead to development of cervical cancer or uterine cancer. I'll be taking the viruses at the last, so I'll not go to the virus section now. We'll be discussing virus in details. So I'm moving on to the next part of our topic, that is the characteristics of cancer. But prior to coming to that topic, I'd like to show you 3 slides giving you a broad view of the development of cancer. Let's move on to the first slide. See, these are the 3 levels of a cancer. When it takes years for a cancer symptom to develop. So when a cancer symptom develops, so we have to move in a funnel-like manner. When we see a human developing symptoms of cancer, there are markers, there are imaging and mutation detection by which the anomaly is detected. Here the example of skin carcinoma has been shown. So the first level is the diagnosis. The symptoms are seen, and based on the symptoms, the tests are done. The second level of cancer is the cellular level. So this is the physiological level. The next level is the cellular level, where you can see, if you can see the difference in colors, you can see their skin cells have been mutated, are showing a different abnormal phenotype and are rapidly proliferating. So when we are seeing certain abnormalities in the physiological level, simultaneously at the cellular level, what are observed? So we observe that these pathways are disrupted. The pathway of cell survival, the pathway of genome maintenance, the pathway of cell death. So these pathways are disrupted at the cellular level. Concurrently, when we are seeing a physiological phenomena known as cancer, at the cellular level, we are seeing disrupted pathways, then at the genome level. So at that very moment, what are the changes that are occurring in the genome level? There might be number of point mutations. There might be number of copy variants. There might be chromosomal rearrangements. There might be aneuploidy. There might be change in gene expression. So when this particular disease sets in a body, it has three levels. One is the whole body level or the physiological level. At that moment, what is happening at the cellular level? And also at that given moment, what is happening at the genome level? So this slide is a basic summary of the three levels of cancer that observed when the disease sets in. The next slide is something which is known as the three strikes of cancer. See, what are the three strikes of cancer? The first strike is breakthrough. So there is an initial mutation in an oncogene or a tumor suppressor gene, as a result of which the oncogene might be activated into a proto-oncogene, or the tumor suppressor gene may be switched off. So there is a oncogene turned on or a tumor suppressor gene turned off, either or. As a result of which, this is known as the first trigger or the first driver mutation. At times, this mutation might not be enough. If you remember the example of colorectal cancer, and you had seen that unless and until P53 was mutated, there was no metastasis observed in case of colorectal cancer. So there needs a second driver mutation at times for the cancer to spread more and to metastasize. So there might be second driver mutations. When the second driver mutations occur, this may be one single event or this may be a couple of events together. So when there is a second driver mutation, this driver mutation now helps the cancer cells to survive in an environment with scarce nutrients, with very low oxygen, and with very low growth factors. So that is the second driver mutation. And finally, we have this one known as invasion. So once there is a second driver mutation and a cancer cell gets all its 6 well-known characteristic properties, the cell is now ready to metastasize. So the final is the invasion. So further mutations in multiple pathways, the cells are now invading. The cells are now invading the blood, and from the blood they move out into tissues and further cancerous growth. So these are the three strikes of cancer. Breakthrough, that is a first driver mutation, which usually results in uncontrolled cell division, but it might or might not give rise to a cancerous cell. Next comes expansion. So it's further expanding, and finally comes invasion. This picture, I just brought it up today to show you that if this is the green colored cell, this was the original cell. So we have some driver mutations here. This is a yellow one with a driver mutation. This is a yellow one, orange one with driver mutations. If you remember, once this mutation starts happening within a cell, look at the colors of the cell. Each cell is different from its progenitor cell. That is the cell from which it is originating. If you look into the colors, you will not get a single same color, indicating that the genome is not the same. So each cell, as you see, as we proceed towards mature cancer cells, you can see how their genome has changed from the original cell. This picture actually summarizes two categories of development of cancer cells. One is a linear development, a perfect example of which we studied the other day, which was known as a colorectal cancer case. But some cancers are multiple, broad. That is, they tend to spread very rapidly, involving other cells also. Usually, we obtain this kind of scenario in brain tumors, where the brain tumor cells tend to move out of the neural cells and propagate into variety of organs, giving rise to a very big heterogeneous cluster of cancer cells. And we also observe this kind of cancerous growth in case of blood cancers, where initially one particular lymphocyte or the lymphocyte progenitor is affected, but in the long run, it is gradually affecting all the lymphocyte lineages. So this is the evolution. I wanted to show this picture to you to make you understand that whenever there is one mutation, the cellular physiology actually changes from the original mother cell. So this was a normal cell, and after this cell, you will not get a single cell either simulating the mother cell, nor will you get a single cell that is very similar to the cell from which that cell has originated. So this is the evolution of a cancer. And now moving on to the very 6 characteristics of metastatic tumor cells. This model was first proposed by Hanan and Weinberg in 2000. And as you can see, we have discussed most of the characters. These are the very big, basic 6 properties which are obviously seen in all cancer cells. The first is self-sufficiency in growth signals. We have discussed this again and again. They become self-sufficient to growth signals, and that is why they target the RB pathway. As I had said while teaching you cell cycle, that in 99.99% of cancers, the RB is mutated. So we have discussed this in details while doing cell cycle also, that the cancer cells become self-sufficient in growth signals. Second, insensitivity to anti-growth signals. At times what happens when a cell reaches its definite function or reaches a definite cellular mass, the growth factors are withdrawn. If you remember in your cell cycle class, I had explained that in case of skin fibroblast cells, when they gain full maturity, the whole body surface is done, then the growth factor is withdrawn so that the cells remain in G0 arrest or quiescent stage. And then if the need arises, when growth factors are available, they divide. So in case of cancer cells, withdrawal of growth factors will not help, because they have become insensitive to anti-growth signals. Third, evasion of apoptosis. We have studied apoptosis, and we have also discussed it in length, that the cancer cells are indeed capable of evading the pathways of programmed cell death. They do it basically by hyperexpression of the BCL2 survival protein. Next, limitless replicative potential. They're capable of constant replication. So that is, they have become hyper proliferative. So this was the 4th one. Then tissue invasion. I'll come to tissue invasion the last. Sustained angiogenesis. Sustained angiogenesis is, as I had told you again and again, that cancer cells, when they proliferate and divide to give a huge tumorous mass, a time comes when the tumorous mass is deficient of oxygen. So they need oxygen, they need nutrients. They do not have any blood vessels moving past them. What do? They produce certain angiogenic signals such as vascular endothelial growth factors or EGF, endothelial growth factors. On sensing these growth factors, the endothelial cells of the blood vessel lining starts moving towards the cancer cell, thus causing a sprouting of a new blood vessel. This blood vessel thus now carries blood containing oxygen and nutrients to the cancer cells. And so that phenomenon is known as angiogenesis, and cancer cells are very much capable of sustained angiogenesis. They're capable of blood vessel formation. And finally, tissue invasion. So when the cancer cells have got all the 5 properties, the cell is now ready to migrate from its original mother mass through the blood vessel into a new foreign organ or a tissue. So it develops the property of tissue invasion or metastasis. The moment it develops the property of tissue invasion and metastasis, the cell has now become a full-grown cancer cell. Till the 5 characters it had developed, it was a tumor mass. The moment it is developing the property of tissue invasion and metastasis, right now it has become an adult cancer cell, ready to enter blood, ready to go out of blood into a tissue or an organ to give rise to a new tumor or a cancer mass. So we have now studied the 6 basic characteristics of a metastatic tumor cell. Now let's move on to the next part. Let's get to the property, to some of the important property one by one. So the first property is density independent growth. Now we know, it is known that normal cells proliferate until they reach a final destiny, after which the availability of growth factors is important. As I had given you the example of fibroblast cells, I had said you that when the body reaches the maximum surface area, the fibroblast cells of the skin become arrested because they do not get any growth factors then. So this is the normal property of a normal cell. That is, once if a cell is cultured, this is a petri dish, this is a petri dish, and some normal cells are being cultured. As you can see, these cells are also dividing. This is a petri dish where tumor cells are being cultured. Here the cells are dividing. Now, when the cells have completely filled a single layer of the petri dish, that is monolayer, it is monolayer dense, then the cells becomes quiescent. That is, the cell becomes arrested. But if you look onto the cancerous cells, you can see that they are continuing proliferation. They do not stop, and they become multi-dense layer. One layer, thereafter another layer, thereafter another layer. What I had discussed in the case of uterine endometrium. So therefore, multiple density layers. So this is the first difference between a normal cell and a cancer cell. A normal cell is dependent on the density, and a cancer cell becomes independent of the density of the cellular mass present around it. There's another difference I want to show you out here. This is a normal pathway. It is known to all that all cells arise from a stem cell. So we have some daughter stem cells, and in the process of development, these daughter stem cells differentiate to give us terminally dividing cells which have certain tissues, which are tissue specific. But in case of cancer cells, these are stem cells, and these are usually known as cancer stem cells. These gives rise to daughter stem cells, and these daughter stem cells continuously grows on dividing without no tissue specific differentiation. Now, what is the advantage of this? Since they do not have any tissue specific differentiation, as a result of which they can migrate to any tissue of their wish. So this was the first property. This is the second property, autocrine growth stimulation. there are three ways by which a signaling molecule can travel. One is the autocrine, two is the paracrine, three is the endocrine. Autocrine means that this cell produces certain growth factors, and this cell also produces receptors for these growth factors. The growth factors produced by this cell binds to the receptors of this cell only, and it further divides. That is autocrine. So look at this picture. The cancer cell is producing growth factor. It is having receptor for that growth factor also. And it is thus, again, taking in the growth factor, and cellular division is continuing. But prior to the picture, you just have a look into this. This is the receptor. This is the growth factor receptor. The blue molecule is the growth factor produced by the cancer cell, and the red molecule is a growth factor produced by other cell. So when we think of a cancer cells have developed the property of autocrine growth stimulation as is being illustrated in this particular picture. What is not illustrated in this picture, if you look into down, we'll see the two other kinds of signaling also. See, there are certain cells surrounding a cancer cell. Just like a normal cell has a microenvironment, has a niche of its own, a cancer cell also has a microenvironment and a niche of its own. So the neighboring cells of the cancer cells are, as you can see, are the stromal cells or the endothelial cells of the blood vessels. So these cells are now, these are local cells. They are present in local milieu of the cancer cell, in the local environment of the cancer cells. These cells are now producing growth factors, which can also be taken up by the, as you can see, they are taken up by the receptors of the cancer cell. On the other hand, as I had said, that cancer cells also secrete certain growth factors like vascular endothelial growth factors or EGF. They are taken up by the, as you can see, they are taken up by the endothelial cells, and they are thus also replying and sending more growth factors to the cancer cells. So this is a positive feedback loop that is occurring between a cancer cell and a stromal cell. Now let's move downwards. This is the endocrine signaling. The moment we think of endocrine signaling, you should keep it in mind that the signaling molecules are now involving a blood vessel. There is a cancer cell and there is a distant producing cell, or there is a cancer cell and there is a target cell in distance. So it can be either of the two. There's a cancer cell and there's a distant hormone producing cell. There is a cancer cell and there's a distant target cell. So now there is a mediator, which is the blood vessel. Through the blood, certain hormones, such as the tumor growth promoting factor, which is a cytokine as well as a hormone, can be produced and can be taken in by the cancer cells, which helps them in further proliferation. Or otherwise, the cancer cells might produce certain growth factors which travel through the blood into distant target cells. So initially, even though the concept of autocrine growth stimulation was only thought about in cancer cell development, later on, these two concepts further developed that cancer cells can indeed induce paracrine stimulation and endocrine stimulation.